Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Astrology with Ethan YouTube channel and podcast. Today is another YouTube episode installment about one of the 12 houses and what it means if you have any of the seven traditional planets there, as well as 12 zodiac signs. And the house we're focusing on today is one a lot of us know for its indications around career and reputation and public actions, and that is the 10th house. So, if we just begin with the astronomy of the 10th house, it is the hour of the day where the sun is at the highest point in the sky. So, it represents what you're directly looking up at. And when I think of what we're directly looking up at, it's usually an authority of some kind. And so in ancient astrology, they actually gave the 10th house to the mother, right? That early authority, that early imprint we get of yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. So you can also associate the 10th house with the father. Some people tend to associate it with more so the father, but it really can be any of the two parents. So the 10th house is what was modeled to you. And I think it has a lot to do with the expectations we put on ourselves in the 10th house, the ways in which we strive to be part of society. And in this striving, we can have many different types of public actions, right? Some people might choose to have really glimmering corporate careers. Other people might choose to live a more unconventional lifestyle. Other people might just want to hide out from the world, right? So that 10th house is really describing your relationship, your orientation to society. The 10th house is one of the four angles. So, being an angular house, it's about a major life theme. So, when we're looking at the 10th house, we're looking at the way, again, somebody applies themselves in the world in a public way, where and how they're establishing authority in their lives. And this is usually descended from some early imprint of authority, be it the mother or the father. The 10th house is opposing the fourth house. So the fourth house is about your roots and your family. So there's automatically this connection between what did we learn at home and how are we carrying that into the world ourselves. It also creates a square to the first house, which is about you as you authentically are in the world. And that tension describes how tough it can be to sort of have ourselves, our personal interests, hobbies, and talents, right? That's all described by the first house. And then the world, right? The 10th house that we must respond to. So that's a really interesting tension as well. The other tension is the square the 10th makes to the seventh house. The seventh house being our relationships. In what way do our relationships play out in the greater world? What are we, who are we aligning with, and what are we together creating? Is attention described there as well. So you can already see that the 10th house hinges on a lot of very personal areas of life. And it's sort of how are we working, how are we massaging those different parts of life into kind of this is who I'm going to be in the world. This is what I'm going to put forward. This is how I'm going to show up. And to me, the 10th house is, I think, better described as the house where we show up, right? It's like how we show up in the world, how we show up publicly, what sorts of actions we take in the broader community. So it is not just about career. It's anything that you do in the public and the way you're perceived or received by the public. So, with that little bit of explanation, it's going to shift each time we're looking at a new archetype in terms of, what authority imprinting you received, how you internalize that, how you're working that, and then how you're creating your own authority and your own mode of interaction in the broader public sphere. So, let's start with the Sun or Leo in the 10th house. So, this is one where you actually might feel full of lots of confidence in the world. Um, Leo is a very independent sign. The sun is our own unique light. So there's a very keen sense here of I have something to contribute. Of like, I'm going to go out there and make a name for myself, right? I'm going to be a leader of some kind. I'm going to be somebody people can look to for guidance. And you very well may be. You might be somebody who really, shines in a community setting. You could be a really good leader, a really good spokesperson for something. You could be a great teacher, the way that you illuminate and bring that solar energy into this space. What I also tend to see is that these people, because they burn so brightly in public spaces, they often carry all the burdens of that. So, Leo is a sign that can be kind of controversial because it's like, here I am. And some people are going to love that and some people are going to hate that. So, these people can also sort of feel the projections of other people very easily. But it's almost like they want this, like they want a response. They want that congratulation. They want that adoration or that reaction. And something for Leo in the 10th house people is getting more comfortable in that need to be recognized, in that need to be seen as powerful or as a leader, because Leo is where we develop our confidence. So these people can be really looking to develop their confidence in a public setting and being, outspoken and, a strong source of energy and warmth and light for other people. And that, of course, comes with all the baggage of having haters and whatnot. On the more intimate family side of things, you could have had a parent who was larger than life, and this could have been the mother, but somebody who, in a way, had a really big personality, right? And you might question or even be in competition sometimes with this parental figure, like, who can outshine who can have more of an effect, right? So you might also feel or have felt in your household a little bit unseen or overshadowed by somebody's bright light. And now you're like wanting to take that power back. This is often the Scorpio rising chart. If you use whole sign houses, it would always be the Scorpio rising chart. And so there is something here that's really interesting about really searching for your own empowerment and needing to share your journey to empowerment, needing to empower others through darkness with your light, with your wisdom and courage. So, in terms of actual occupations, or we'll call them public actions, public capacities somebody could take up in the world with Sun or Leo in the 10th house, literally anything where you are a leader or a figurehead in something or a real pro, like somebody who knows a lot about something in particular. The sun is also associated with the intellect, so you might do something that's quite intellectual. And that's also, all about having a spotlight, but also giving the spotlight to other people, right? So think a teacher, really, or a director, or somebody who, really knows how to shine the light, but also be in the light simultaneously. Leo in the sun, I don't limit just to like arts and creative stuff. I really see this as somebody who can just be on and who can inspire others with their brilliance, with their light. So I hope that helps. Okay, moving on to the moon or having Cancer in the 10th house. So let's start with the mother or the parents first here, because the mother or the parents could have been very, very affectionate and warm and giving, and you could have just felt really understood as a child. Like you're one of those people who might be like, yeah, mom and dad were great, like they're wonderful. They met my needs, they took care of me. There's also the potential with the moon or Cancer here to also have a very emotional parent, or somebody who you had to caretake in some way. But compassion was instilled in you from a very young age. And so compassion is part of what you aspire to give other people. That's part of your public actions or reputations is being a source of compassion and love and giving. So for you, you might find yourself drawn to particular occupations like therapy or healing or working as a nurse or being somebody who is really tending to the sensitivities of other people. Because the Cancer moon archetype are also more this divine feminine, this more yin, I have seen that people with Cancer or the moon in the 10th house often have a very complicated relationship with career, like that whole notion of a career because they're so focused on the local, right? The moon also rules the local, that they're not necessarily looking to be stars, right? They're not looking to be famous or be known. Like they're really about giving intimate level care to people. And that often starts right in your community. So you also might be a person who likes to stay in the place you grew up or stay with your family or care for your family in some way or just do something that's closely knit and close to home. There's also something around safety with the moon and Cancer. So having either of these in the 10th house could also mean that like you could tend to play it safe. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It just means that like compared to other people, you might not like push yourself as hard in life. Like you just might be more okay with your routines and with having something in the community and that doesn't force you to go super beyond your comfort zone. I mean, obviously, you could have Cancer, the moon in the 10th house, and want to be, a millionaire, want to be on top, but it has to also be from the sense of like, I'm nurturing something, I'm doing this for my security. Like, you could also be very motivated to do something in the world that is more, let's say, material but it's like because I need that security. Like I need that security in my life. I need to feel safe. I need to feel like I'm protected. I need to feel like whatever I'm doing to make money, it's enough money. Whatever I'm doing in the community, it's giving me also this felt sense of emotional safety and security. So that is Moon and Cancer in the 10th house. Okay, having Mercury as well as Gemini or Virgo more broadly in the 10th house. Says that you may have had a parent, an authority figure who was very intellectual, buzzing with ideas, always encouraging you to think for yourself, to be um, a thinker of your own thoughts. And you were likely a child who was engaged in some pretty deep and interesting conversations from a young age, right? With Sagittarius on the fourth house cusp, this would be the Virgo rising chart. Like, you were born into a family that had big questions that encouraged you to think philosophically and maybe even spiritually. Maybe there's even a religious background there. And so, what you're motivated to do is to continue this probing and this questioning around truth, really. And it's going to manifest a little differently with each sign. Like if you had Gemini there, you might be a person who really enjoys being in an academic environment, an environment that allows you to connect with people and get their stories and get their points of view, right? And really challenge your own ways of thinking. And so this is a great placement for somebody who wants to be engrossed in an intellectual conversation or even doing something like journalism, right? Anything that allows you to sort of get these different bites of information and then synthesize them into a piece of writing or a piece of speaking that's then able to go back out to other people and teach them something, give them a new perspective. So I really like Mercury in the 10th house in this way. It's very dialectical. It's very interested in having dialogues and discussions. A Virgo would be a little bit different in the 10th house, right? This is somebody who has Pisces in the fourth house. So I want to say that the family was a little bit more, dreamy or unrealistic. But if you had Virgo in the 10th house, you also might have had a parent who was extremely realistic and was like, this is how you cross your T's and dot your I's. This is how you tie your shoelaces. Like getting an education in very, very, very specific ways of being and doing and living life. And so with Virgo there in the 10th house, you could actually feel a strong amount of pressure to hold yourself correctly in the world, to be very diligent about the details of your life, to be very good with money, to be skilled or to be practical when it comes to a career or job. And I find that really actually interesting because the Virgo 10th house chart is a Sagittarius rising via whole sign houses. So Sagittarius is like this energy of freedom and expansion, and I'm gonna go off and find the truth, through my intuition. But then there's this part of you, Sagittarius rising with Virgo in the 10th house that kind of wants to contain that, or that energy can kind of scare it a bit. And so it's like, well, let me prioritize what's realistic so that I have time to explore. Let me do what is going to be the practical or the reasonable thing. And so, Virgo in the 10th house people can just be much more realistic career paths, or people who at least take very detailed steps to get to where they want to go. And so it's not like they're not doing the Mercury thing of like, it's a mutable sign. So you might have multiple different jobs or ways that you show up in the world. But with Virgo, it's more grounded, it's more studious, it's more focused. And the Gemini energy in the 10th house is more like, yeah, you might change a lot. You might have a lot of different occupations or public actions, but they're really motivated by conversation, right? Gemini's an air sign. It's about give and take. It's about having conversation. Virgo, meanwhile, is an earth sign. So it's a bit more like, give me the instructions and I will carry it out very, very well. This is another signification of Mercury in the 10th house that we don't, oh no, we do hear this a lot. I'm going to say something that we don't hear a lot, but to start with what we do hear a lot, Mercury divides, right? So it takes the whole and it breaks it down into two or more things. So having Mercury in the 10th house just automatically means that your public life is going to be varied, right? You might be known in different circles for different things. You might have multiple careers if you are pursuing a career. Um, and learning is going to be a big part of like what takes you out into the world. So it's like you want to take a class, right? You want to study something deeper. You want to achieve a higher understanding of the world. That is going to be what kind of takes you out of the house and puts you out there. It's like I want to get a new skill. I want to learn something new. The thing I was going to say we don't hear a lot about Mercury in the 10th house is that these people are remembered by people in their lives for their humor, actually. I've seen a lot of people with Mercury in the 10th house just be very funny, or they have this unique way of speaking or conveying their thoughts through writing. And people just like pick up on them like that, right? The 10th house is sort of if we had like a red dot on our head or some sort of clear marker of who we are out there in the world. People would be like, I remember you for that, right? For that joke you told, for that stand-up bit you did, for that way you explained that concept. Like, that's what I know you for, right? And it could have just been with Mercury in the 10th house, like you're having lots of different conversations. And so you probably actually know a lot of people having Mercury or Mercury signs in the 10th house because, Mercury just sort of, woo, it's malleable. It takes you everywhere. But again, Gemini is going to have that more social expression, whereas Virgo is going to have more of that applied in a more practical setting application. So, ah, all right, let's talk about having Venus in the 10th house or Taurus or Libra. So, in terms of parents, in terms of authority, this would have been, a parent or an authority that you were pretty well nourished by, somebody who looked out for your needs, who was supportive, who understood how to take care. Venus, much like the moon, is about caring and connecting and providing, right? Providing what we need. So there's something about getting your needs met here and then having to learn perhaps how to meet your own needs with Venus or Venus signs in the 10th house. Like, wow, all my needs were met so well. Like, I have to learn to do that for myself. And because there's Venus influence in the 10th house, one of the things that you need or that you value, right? Venus is about values, is showing up in the world in this really beautiful way. Like Venus is about beauty, it's about aesthetics, it's about things that also bring people together and give them a sense of harmony and ease and joy. So like your way of showing up in the world is very much motivated by like, I just want to be a kind, gracious, giving person. I want to help other people meet their needs. What this, as you can probably tell, can create with anything Venus is then we become sort of the people pleasers of that house, right? So in the 10th house, we can become with Venus, they're very like, well, what does everybody else think is the really beautiful or glamorous career? Or what does everybody else really value in society? And then we go towards that. And this is particularly true for Taurus, although it does apply for Libra. But the thing about Taurus is that it is known as the inner side of Venus in modern astrology, right? So we kind of look at signs with the same planetary ruler as expressing different octaves of that sign. And Taurus is the much more internal dimension. So having Taurus in the 10th house, it's like you're learning to tune into what you value. What is important to you? What makes you feel good? Because Venus is so good at sort of pleasing and connecting and creating something beautiful for others. It's like, well, what feels beautiful to me? Do I feel I'm beautiful? Because that will radiate. Other people will bask in that when you find that solid foundation of self-worth and alignment. Libra's very similar, right? Libra is an air sign, so it has a little bit of that Gemini Mercury thing of like, it's, somebody who wants to go into the world and meet lots of different types of people. This is totally like the influencer placement in a way, because Libra in the 10th house, it's like, I want to show you my aesthetics, I want to show you my art, I want to show you the way I do lifestyle, and I also want a lot of people. I want their input. I want to see what they're doing. So similarly with Libra, it's like it's great to be connected to lots of different folks living their unique lifestyle. But you might find actually having Libra in the 10th house that you're always kind of doing or being pulled to do the opposite trend. So Libra in the 10th house can be a real trendsetter, right? Libra is balanced. So if everyone's going mainstream, if everyone's going one way, you might be the avant-garde. You might be the person who says, well, I'm gonna if punk rock is in, I'm gonna go preppy, and my whole feed is just gonna be really preppy schoolgirl or something like that, right? So Libra is actually a signature of controversy at times because of that scale. Because when, especially on social media, trends catch fire like that and something's just boom, high up in the algorithm. So you're kind of learning to bring that down with your own unique expression. But that depends on like, oh, am I just doing something to be alternative or to be different? Or is this actually aligned, similar to Taurus, with my actual tastes, with my actual preferences? So that's the thing about Venus or Venus signs in the 10th house is you have the ability to actually really show off your tastes and your values in this way that could inspire other people. And further than what you're known for is having this particular taste or this particular eye or angle on things. There's a way that you do beauty, right? That you create value, that could be very unique, or at least that should be the goal, is to externalize your uniqueness in a beautiful way and an aesthetic way, but making sure it's your own and not copycatting other people. So people often say, oh, career paths for Venus in the 10th house, Taurus, Libra, beauty, food, anything to do with the earth, anything to do with, makeup or aesthetics. But I think it goes so much deeper than that. I think it can be all those things, and it may manifest in a very visual or sensual or pleasuresome way for other people. But it's about using the tools of beauty that are within you naturally to give that effect to people and not trying to just harmonize with whatever the beautiful thing is in society that day. So, hope that helps. All right, let's go to Mars or Aries or Scorpio in the 10th house. So, this is where we get into some more malefic territory because Mars is technically one of the malefic planets, next to Saturn, who's the greater malefic, who we'll get into later. So, when you have Mars in the 10th house, if we start with childhood, if we start with parents and authority figures, this could have meant you had a parent who was a little bit hard to deal with. You know, Mars can be irritation and aggression. So you could have just dealt with a parent who was, a little bit on the rageaholic side or a little bit on the manic side, or somebody who was just really also motivated, mother or father. They could have just been very like, yeah, like I'm gonna go out into the world and this is what I'm gonna do and watch me go. And so there's a sense of impulsiveness maybe around one of the parents, or there's an impulsivity that you carry yourself. Mars, is a little bit like Uranus, the modern planet, in that it can be a bit of a rebel. So you from a young age could have been like, I'm going to rebel. Um, Authority, right? Like, I'm not going to listen to what they've done because what they've done is shit, right? Imagine looking up and you see everything Mars represents, and that's your image of authority, right? Mars can be wars and fights and aggression and people being unfairly treated, right? It can also be motivation. It can also be like, wow, that energy is really inspiring. But it can also be like shit that we kind of get mad at. So there's just naturally, I think, this bit of like, I don't like the way it's been done, right? And this is the Cancer rising chart if you put Aries there, and the Aquarius rising chart if you put Scorpio there. So, in both the Cancer and Aquarius rising chart, very different signs to have on the rising, but there's something about family that could be a little bit triggering for these people, right? And so they are motivated to blaze their own trail, to be their own person. And the kind of person they might be known as in the world is somebody who's a little feisty, who um, could be a little unpredictable. Somebody who can also be very convinced in their aims, like somebody who's like, I'm going to go this way, and nobody can tell me I'm not allowed to go that way. These people often kind of have this lone wolf quality to them as well. There is this, the symbol of Mars is the line moving out from the circle. So these can also be people who tend to be like, I will do it myself. Like, I don't need anybody else's help, right? Aries is like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to do it. So these people can actually be very, very, very motivated to have a position of public authority if it's channeled in that way. It can also be somebody who's a bit rebellious towards the idea of authority their whole lives, and they're just like, I don't want to deal with that. Either way, these people make their mark by being, what is the word I'm looking for? Boisterous isn't the word. That almost feels more Jupiter. They make their mark in the world by sort of being, they cut things up, right? They scramble things up. They're known for being rebels, really, for being people who aren't afraid to say it like it is and to do their lives very authentically to them. This is very true when you have Aries there. Aries is that more active side of Mars. So it's going to be somebody who's also very active, right? They might actually do something career-wise or be known for something in the public realm that has to do with their action, like the way they act, the way they move. Mars can also be with sports. It can also be associated with military. And that's something else I've actually seen is that Mars on the 10th You might have had a parent who was in the military. But there could have been, yeah, like there's kind of this militant, or oh, I don't like the word militant for this, but like there is this archetype of sort of the warrior in the authority you naturally carry forward. And if we go to the Scorpio expression of Mars, which is the more inactive side of Mars, the more internal. Um, Scorpio midheaven or Scorpio in the 10th house can be somebody who is uh they are they tend to be people who don't trust super easily. This is the Aquarius rising chart. Hello. They could be a little bit distrustful of authority. There could be some kind of dark forces in the world they've seen. They could have witnessed some really tough shit, we'll just say. And the thing about the Scorpio 10th house person is that they are extremely fascinated by power and how they can deconstruct power. um, and in how they can also fully step into their power. Because Scorpio is all about stepping into our fullest power, right? Burning down all of the crud that stands in our way of becoming who we can ultimately be and then being it and then being that phoenix rising from the ashes. So these people could also really have to go through many cycles, Scorpio in the 10th house, of pulling themselves up out of the shit, of pulling themselves up out of places where they've, gotten very invested and having to shed again and again and again those layers until they kind of arrive at this empowered sense of authority, which then, it's got Aries in the 10th house is more that instant rebel. Scorpio, it can kind of take some time. Like they have to really break some stuff down and process, and then they're like full of their power. And then Scorpio, because it's that focus, right? You know that Scorpio, those Scorpio eyes, it's that focus. Then they are unstoppable. Then they are focused. So Scorpio in the 10th house can be extremely powerful because it's like, I'm going to get where I'm going to go. I'm going to go through every hurdle. I'm going to, it's a fixed sign. It's like, I'm going to stick it out because I've seen other people do this the wrong way. I've seen other people hurt or abuse or disappoint other people or cut corners. I'm not going to be that way. Like, I'm going to be a model of true empowerment. And so this can go back just to Mars in general in the 10th house. Somebody who is motivated to be that warrior, motivated to be that force who shows up in the world that way. So in terms of like actual occupations, I know everybody always likes the tangible, touchable, feelable, tasteable occupation that could go at their 10th house. Um, this could be somebody who's like a firefighter, honestly, or does something like that, where they're willing to expose themselves to risky or difficult or just challenging situations that they come through. And I mean, you could apply that to anything, right? I don't want to box in what anybody does as a career, but like you're willing, the beauty of this placement is you're willing to put up with the challenges and the setbacks that come with finding your own authority. There's this resilience. There's this, I'll push through it. I'll find a way. And so anything in the public that allows you to do that, such as being, let's say, a firefighter, right? People remember you. You're like, you saved the day, or you did that impossible thing. You put yourself in the flames and you didn't burn. Like, how did you do that? So these people are known for their tremendous resilience, their warriorhood, and also their rebellion and their rebellious qualities. Because if you think about it, it's like, we just talked about Venus. Venus is like, how do I make everyone happy? Mars is like, how do I burn the stuff down and start from ground zero? So that's the kind of authority. That's the kind of, parent maybe they had, but also the parent they're trying to rid of and come up in a new expression of that for themselves. That's authentically located. Okay, so we've done the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. We're now at our two transpersonal planets or, big guys in the sky, Jupiter and Saturn. So let's talk about Jupiter and Saturn for a minute because Jupiter and Saturn have a very interesting relationship. In the Greek mythology, Jupiter, who was Zeus, and Saturn was Kronos, but I'll use the Roman words. So Jupiter was the son of Saturn, the only son to survive the eating of the children, right? And so when Jupiter escaped, Saturn was sent to the underworld for this terrible crime he had committed for eating his children, for being this tyrant. And so both of these energies in the 10th house are very powerful. At one point were both kings, Saturn and Jupiter. But the way that they become king is very different, right? Jupiter has a much easier time becoming king. It's like, yes, you're the good guy. And then Saturn's a little bit like, oh, you're the bad guy, right? So let's start with Jupiter. So Jupiter in the 10th house, if we start in that family level, and Jupiter and or Pisces and Sagittarius, because those are the signs ruled by Jupiter. So having that planet or those signs in the 10th house means that the family authority figure that you looked up to was somebody that you probably genuinely admired. Their faith, their optimism, their buoyancy, their ability to carry the family through whatever came up, right? You look up and you're like, ah, that's a real force of positive energy. Like, I like that. Um, the parent also could have been religious or very spiritual. So you also could have looked up to the parent and been like, wow, they're very wise, or maybe you didn't like their religious or spiritual beliefs. And so there's a little bit of reclaiming that going on. But what this placement gives you that I think a lot of us would be very jealous of is that your parent instilled some sense of faith in you, some sense of optimism, of like can-do attitude. And so that is why these people have often really great success in life because they just have this positivity. They radiate this ability to just be like, yep, I have the faith, I can do it. I am capable of rising above whatever challenges that are in my way. These people can also be deeply committed to service. There's this real service side to Jupiter because Jupiter was about service and freedom and helping release people from bondage and bad situations and then punishing bad. So actually, something else that this can manifest as is as a strong moral compass. So a very strong moral compass, a very fixed belief system sometimes, which could have come from childhood, and then we kind of carry those beliefs. And so one of the shadows of this is that you might be sorting through your beliefs as you get older. But there's another shadow I want to talk about, which is that when things come easily to you because of your faith, because of your optimism and your just general good attitude on life, we can take those things for granted. So often Jupiter in the 10th house will have a lot of luck or success, and it's a bit like the Nine of Cups card in the tarot, where he's has everything and he's still not happy, like he's still not satisfied. And similar to Venus in the 10th house, Jupiter in the 10th house can really go searching for like the highs. It can get very focused on what's sparkly. Specifically what is larger than life. These people can have larger than life careers, actually, or just lives. Like you likely with if you have Jupiter or Jupiter signs in the 10th house are going to be known for having this larger than life experience, this very unique, this path in life that is almost mythical, right? And one of the difficulties about having such a big life is that you can sort of forget that. You can sort of forget that, or you can sort of be looking to keep it bigger and getting bigger and getting bigger and getting bigger. And you have to kind of arrive at this sense of satisfaction within. You have to kind of return back to your roots of faith and enjoyment in the what's right here, right now, because Jupiter can also be ideals and our bigger dream for our life. And so sometimes your dreams can be so big that it leaves you feeling like a failure before you've even gotten started, or before you've even reached a certain level yet. And if you fall into something really easily, right, you might not always stay there. Like you might have that great job, but then when that job fades, what are you left with? What are your skills? Where is your work? So there can be a little bit of this in the Jupiter in the 10th house, like inflation of like, I can have anything, do anything I want. What happens though when times are tough? Jupiter is also the Wheel of Fortune card, in my opinion. So it's like times can be really good with Jupiter in the 10th house, but they can also be kind of hard. There can also be, and this could have come from the parents, but just this sort of high brow morality around what you're doing. Like, oh, well, what I'm doing is really important, or it's like I'm doing something really good and there can be kind of an evil or a bad in the world that we're always fighting, right? Think that very evangelical or, ultra religious kind of attitude. It's like that can be brought into the career, that can be brought into public life in some way where you're sort of, the authority and you punish or put down other people because, I have to make sure that I'm pure or that I'm good. So I hope this is making sense. This is covering a lot of bases. Let's get into some tangible careers for this one. Um, Really anything where you are allowed to expand and go very far. You could travel for work. You could also teach for work or be wise in some way to other people, be a really good um yeah, counselor or somebody who's kind of opening people's worldviews, obviously teacher. Saturn and Jupiter, once again, are sort of these king energies. So really you can, and probably aspire because of that childhood of like, you can have anything you want, anything's possible. You probably dream really big and that's what you're aiming for. You're aiming for that big position, that big title, that big thing, which is fabulous. But just remember to pace yourself and remember, like, you're not doing it wrong because the thing didn't manifest. Like, in all that manifestation culture we have, there's like often, these myths about bringing in more money. You can do all the rituals and you can do all the things, but then there can still not be money. And then you're left feeling really bad that you did all those rituals. And it's kind of similar with this placement. It's like we can have this belief and then we can work ourselves to the bone and then there can be kind of no reward, and so it has to return us back to that original, like, what is the vision that's inspiring me? What do I actually um what's actually motivating me and what do I enjoy in the present? There could be a real, because Jupiter's so boom, going out, it's like I need to kind of come back in and figure out why I like this. What is my intuition saying? How does this feel? Right? Jupiter exalts in Cancer. So we can only expand, we can only manifest when we're in the feeling of that which we want, right? So it's like there can also be this simplification that goes on with Jupiter in the 10th house of really simplifying to the level of like the little things that really matter. And then from focusing on just those little things that matter, things do expand. Your garden does grow so big because you're just focused on that joy, right? Jupiter can be joy and release from suffering. So what's greater than that? That's something also you aspire to have, right? You aspire to be a positive impact, a leader who inspires, who has some wisdom to give, who has something to teach, and who is ultimately, you know, uh, following their intuition and honoring the authenticity in that. So, Jupiter in the 10th, wow, you have a very bright life path, and people would remember you once again for your brightness, for your intuition, for your wisdom and your larger than life story. Okay, so once again, applying to Pisces and Sag there as well. I guess I could get into that real briefly. Sag is a fire sign, so this is going to be a person who probably takes a lot of actions. There's somebody who is very motivated to get out there and to explore and do lots of different acts and be in school, they might love training, they might love education, they might love learning, like they soak that up and that is like where they're known in the world. Oh, hey, I know you from that school, or hey, I know you from that lecture, or hey, I know you from that class you taught, right? That Sagittarius kind of energy. If you had Pisces in the 10th house, definitely different, right? Pisces is a water sign, it's mutable water. So actually with the Pisces in the 10th house, there can be this real dreaminess and that could take you to some interesting places. but it's also this energy of also kind of the mystic or the spiritualist or somebody who is sort of treading through the fog of life. And you are making meaning of it somehow. You're giving other people some insight to this more psychic, deeper realm. You're doing something that kind of, yeah, gives meaning to the fog, gives subtext to the image, right? Pisces is very visual as well. So something maybe visual where you're giving us a meaning or you're giving us some context or you're expressing in a way that conveys a deeper truth. People could know you for that as well as just for your generally very spiritual outlook as well. And your journey of spirituality, your journey of becoming more connected. You're also probably somewhat of a connector because Pisces is mutable water, so it brings lots of people together. So you probably just a lot of people have come into your ocean, have come into your ocean web, and have been blessed by something you've had to say or teach them or share with them artistically, and you're remembered for being this kind of mystic. Sagittarius more remembered for being like that teacher, that person who knows a lot or has done a lot of education. So, um, some additional commentary there. Okay, we are at the last planet archetype, which covers two signs. So that's Saturn, and the signs it rules are Capricorn and Aquarius. So this last segment's going to cover what it means with all those. Saturn. We'll start with first, just the planets, the basic archetype. So we start with that 10th house. We're looking up, we're seeing authority, we're seeing, the parent that was predominant in our life, mother or father. Saturn is, let's go back to that myth, right? Saturn was a little greedy, was a little power hungry, and he suffered some exile. He suffered some real hard conditions. So you may have grown up with a parent who had been exposed to the darker or harsher sides of life. There actually can be sometimes here kind of like a negative energy or a depressing energy with a parent. They could also sort of restrict you, and you could have felt restricted. Like you were reaching for something. They were like, nope, like you're reaching for the cookie jar. And they're like, no, no, no. You don't get a cookie. You only get to eat a cookie once a week. That would suck, right? Imagine that. You only eat a cookie once a week. I need to have one like every night. So, you know, um, you can't have the cookie. You can't have the sweet. And I should really try to not have sweets every night now that I think about it. But you get what I'm saying. There's a strictness here. And this causes you thus to carry this sometimes strictness into the world. High expectations of yourself, very, very hardworking, this ability because Saturn is the darker sides of life, right? It joys in the 12th house. There's this knowledge with Saturn that like life can get really freaking hard. And so you could unintentionally sort of plan for the bad or structure your life in a way that is like, well, I'm not going to be that bad thing or that dark thing or that thing I saw in a parent. Like I'm going to make sure I'm doing it better than. But then this can create a restriction all in and of itself, where we think we're creating something different, but we're still adding limitations and restrictions to our lives. So the key here with Saturn is to develop your own moral compass, your own restrictions, your own boundaries, to not let those be externally given to you, but to rather kind of choose yourself. And this is why Saturn brings delays, because we need delays. We need lots of time to figure out what boundaries we're going to set, what restrictions we want to place on our life, and what is a restriction, what is a boundary, but you knowing yourself. So this is ultimately about really knowing yourself and knowing the kind of life you want. Now, what I will say about Saturn is it pays attention to, once again, the darkness in life, the suffering of others. So these people can be really interested in helping others who are suffering, helping others who are restricted in some way, who are bound, helping other people work through issues with parents who are restricting or hard or tough in some way. When we go to Capricorn and Aquarius, right, these are the signs of the collective governance. So these people who have Capricorn or Aquarius care very much about doing something in the world that responds to a collective need as opposed to a personal need. So there can be a lot of self-sacrifice here. When you're dealing with the Capricorn side of things, you may prefer a life path that's a little bit more traditional. Capricorn in the 10th house. You might just kind of live your life according to how it's been lived by your family, how you saw it modeled. There can also be, this sense of the father, because Capricorn can be that father archetype that you could be sort of filling in for. Or your mother maybe had to kind of fill in for the father role, and so you see yourself as a provider, right? Like Capricorn in the 10th house can be very motivated and very diligent about getting what it needs to survive. Knowing that money can run out, that time can run out. Okay, let me grab this by the balls and make it happen. So there can actually be, with Saturn just in general, worry and fear, these are other sides to Saturn, about making it or being an adult or being on your own. And so that's that whole delays thing. It's like those fears might kind of hold you back initially, or you might not want to touch certain careers that seem too unstable or too risky or too whatever. So you can kind of limit yourself. And we're going to talk about getting out of those limits very last. But let's go to Aquarius next. So Aquarius, if Capricorn is the inner side of Saturn, so it's looking back, Aquarius is looking forward. So these people are the side of Saturn that says, I want to rid of old authorities. You're looking up, and when you see Aquarius up in the sky, you're seeing this kind of funky, different authority. You're somebody who aspires to take a position in society that rejects or contrasts or seriously reforms what has been done. So this could be in science, this could be in academia, this could be in health. I mean, it could be in literally anything. Aquarius is the reformist. So you're looking at the way something's been done and you're just like, it could be weirder, or, there's more to learn, or, these boundaries seem too tight. How can we expand them? Somebody with Aquarius in the 10th house is going to have a life that's marked by a lot of intellectual questions. A lot of also issues around society and fitting in. And this is just a greater Saturn thing where we know how to play the rules of the game, right? Like we've read the instruction manual. That's Saturn. It's like the instruction manual we're handed. So we've read it front to back and we can perform those actions, but then we feel depressed or we feel detached or we feel like we're not living as much life as we could be. And something that can happen with Saturn placements in the 10th house is that we actually have to go through that lesson at some point of insecurity or losing the stability because, right, that's the delays part. It's like I'm not getting what I want fast enough because all that is breaking down so that you can push out of that prison of Saturn, so that you can push into more of who you are. And then you can build a new boundary around that. And you can say, well, now that I know myself, now that I've allowed myself to push past that authority who's always raining down on me, it's really when these people do this, it's really when they reject the parental authority or whatever, that they actually become their own authority. And then they can be structured and disciplined for all the right reasons, for the reasons of, um, bringing forth um, that which is truly them and will truly benefit society. I want to also comment on Saturn as suffering and difficulty. These people can have a lot of difficulty with career initially, at least before their first or second Saturn return. This is specifically if you have the planet there. And so I think a really good way to work with this is to know over and over again. And failure and rejection is going to show this to you, Saturn, because I'm sorry, Saturn is about rejection and failure. So when it's in the 10th house, it's like, I feel like I'm always being rejected for jobs or whatever. That is all so that you can realize your true gifts. something about Saturn is that it actually rains diamonds. So how I like to think about it astrologically is like you have this thing that's being pressurized. You know, you're getting limited and restricted, and doors are shutting, and opportunities aren't working out. And you're like, I don't fit in anywhere in society. Diamonds come out. Because finally, through all of those no's, through all of that rejection, through all of that suffering, you finally get your yes. And your yes here is meant to be something that comes from within you, not from an outer authority, not from a boss, not from a job, not from a job. It's like it's from within, if that makes sense. And these people can often then be these incredible entrepreneurs who have a very specific vision. They have a very specific thing they do, and they do it really well, and they offer it over and over and over again, if entrepreneurship is something you're interested in. But it could really be any sort of experience where the limitations are set up in our favor. The limitations um, help us to evolve. Now, I'm aware a lot of people who have this placement could also be in a position where it's like their authority can't advance. For example, you know, you get stuck caring for a parent. You get stuck caring for the suffering of another person. Your identity or your authority feels very much like you're always in the shadow of someone else. And this too, I think you could look at through the prism of, oh, this is my opportunity to kind of um, spend a little bit more time with myself. You know, if career doesn't feel like it's happening fast enough with Saturn in the 10th house, no, it's not meant to. And know that all those no's and those rejections and those limitations, through that hardship, you're going to be moved to such a more substantial life. I think Saturn has this very earthy connotation to me. So I think about Saturn in the 10th house, like it's a long time that you are rooting and seeding and gardening and watering that soil that you're standing on. And by the time you're 80, you're going to be so wise. You're going to have so much life experience. You're going to have so much underneath you, supporting you. And Saturn's about kind of simplifying as well, a little bit like Jupiter, but it's in this way of focusing on what truly matters. You're a person who is remembered for focusing on what really matters, for being present to the hard stuff in life, for being somebody who knows how to work through that, who knows how to be committed and disciplined in themselves over a long period of time to achieve some sort of mastery. So this is really, Saturn can be mastery. So this is really mastering your own authority from within. So that was my 10th house video. Could have probably said heaps more about every single placement, but that's what I had in me for tonight. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy. Always leave a comment, subscribe, like if you enjoy it. And I'll see you guys soon on another podcast and surely another YouTube episode very soon. So see you later. Bye.